Dear Daniel, you killed our love novel. Chapter 1. A new female intern at the Thorne family company suddenly started bleeding while giving a work report. I immediately drove her to the hospital. After the examination, the doctor frowned and said, "You didn't know you were pregnant. You're showing signs of a threatened miscarriage. If you want to keep this baby, you must be hospitalized for fetal protection. It's your decision." The girl's name was Lily Roberts. Just a senior in college, she clearly hadn't been through much. Her face pale with fright, she grabbed my hand with teary eyes and asked, "Elena Foster, what should I do?" I comforted her while directing my assistant to handle the admission paperwork. Perhaps due to the shock, Lily's usually apple-red cheeks were still pale. Her big eyes had lost their usual sparkle as she lay listlessly on the bed, asking me repeatedly, "Elena, am I going to be okay?" Although I was a senior executive, I liked to mingle with the younger staff, so they weren't really afraid of me. Especially Lily. She resembled my younger self a bit. When she first joined the company, people said that if you covered the lower half of her face, she looked exactly like I used. Because of this, I looked out for her a bit more. I reached out and brushed her hair back. "Don't worry, the doctor said you'll be fine." Lily pursed her lips. "Elena, have you ever been pregnant? What does it feel like?" As soon as the words left her mouth, she realized her mistake and rushed to explain. "I'm sorry, Elena, I didn't mean that. I lowered my gaze. I have, but I lost it." She froze. "Why?" "Because I didn't know. I drank too much, got a perforated stomach, and the baby couldn't be saved." My fingers twitched slightly. That was a long time ago. But when I thought about it, a dull phantom pain seemed to linger in my body. Lily looked sympathetic and gently touched her own belly. "By the way, where's your boyfriend?" I reminded Lily. "Have your boyfriend come right away. You can't be left alone right now." She lowered her head and whispered, "My boyfriend is busy. I don't think he can be here to take care of me." I frowned. This is a big deal. It's his child, too. What could be more important than this? If your boyfriend can't even show up for this, he's too unreliable. She looked up in a panic to explain. "It's not like that, Elena. He treats me really well. He just can't make it convenient." I asked casually. "Is he a classmate or a colleague? You're not involved in an office romance, are you?" She pressed her lips together and refused to say. "Fine, I won't ask. Just remember to take good care of yourself." Lily smiled. She was a girl in her early 20s, radiating the vibrancy of youth, as pure and blank as a sheet of white paper. She looked up, meeting my gaze with a strange glint in her eyes. "Thank you, Elena. If it weren't for you today, I really don't know what I would have done." An inexplicable unease settled over me, but I brushed it off as overthinking. I nodded, told my assistant to stay and arrange for a nurse for her, then stood up to leave. After taking just a few steps, I ran straight into Daniel, who was striding down the hallway. I froze. "What are you doing here?" Daniel hadn't seemed to expect to see me here. His expression shifted instantly before quickly smoothing back into a natural look. "An employee had an accident. As the boss, I had to come and check on things." He seemed to be trying hard to mask his anxiety, but the beads of sweat on his forehead betrayed him. "How is she?" A flicker of suspicion crossed my mind. "She's fine now. There was a sign of a threatened miscarriage, but we got here in time. She received treatment to stabilize the pregnancy." Daniel visibly let out a sigh of relief. "That's good." He paused for a moment. "You go back first. I'll stay and check on the situation." Suspecting nothing, I turned to leave, but he suddenly grabbed my hand. I looked back. In the backlit corridor, Daniel's face was hidden in shadow. I couldn't see his expression clearly. I only heard his voice, thick with complicated emotions. "Honey, I love you." Chapter 2. Perhaps it's true that what you think about during the day haunts your dreams at night. That night, I dreamt of my first lost child, a dream I hadn't had in a long time. Back then, I was only 19 younger than Lily is now, and Daniel was barely 20. We were naive kids. I didn't even pay attention when my period was late. That day, every cent we had went to paying off Daniel's gambling debts. We couldn't make rent, so when a middle-aged, bald customer started forcing drinks on me during my night shift, I didn't resist. I just wanted to keep him happy, so he'd give me a bigger tip. "Finish this bottle and I'll give you 1,000. At that time, our rent was only $600 a month. Getting that 1,000 would solve our most urgent problem. I drank glass after glass. The bootleg liquor the owner bought felt like ice encasing fire as it burned its way down to my stomach. Suddenly, I felt a heavy, dragging pain in my lower abdomen. The pain intensified rapidly. Sweat broke out on my forehead as I stammered with a trembling voice. "Sir, I can't drink anymore." "My stomach hurts." The bald man's face darkened instantly. "What in the world are you faking?" "If you don't drink today, I'm not giving you a damn cent. Call your manager over here." I was in pain and panicking. My face went cold. I shoved him aside, rushed into the restroom, and vomited violently. Blood mixed with alcohol surged out amidst the excruciating pain. My vision went black and I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was already in the hospital. The smell of disinfectant lingered in my nose. A nurse on her rounds frowned at me. "Didn't you know you were pregnant? Drinking that much alcohol, you've got a perforated stomach." I was stunned. After a long moment, I instinctively touched my lower abdomen. To be honest, in that moment, I didn't have any real, tangible sense of nurturing a life. I just felt utterly lost. Is the baby still there? I didn't know if I should hope it was or wasn't. My mind just went blank. Daniel and I couldn't even support ourselves, so how could we raise this child? The nurse sighed. "We couldn't save it, but it's okay, you're young, you'll have children in the future. By the way, where is your family? Have them come pay the fees." Daniel arrived 2 hours later with borrowed money. He slumped by my bedside, his eyes terribly red and swollen. He opened his mouth but only managed to ask one thing. "Does it still hurt?" I whispered. "A little. I'm sorry, Daniel. I originally wanted to earn some money for rent, but now I've made you borrow money again." He suddenly buried his face hard against my hand. Warm liquid flowed through my fingers as he said in a trembling, hoarse voice, "Silly girl. I'm sorry. It's my fault for being useless and making you suffer with me." I panicked. "No, Daniel, I'm happy being with you. I'm willing to do this." He gripped my hand tightly. Even though I was the one who just got off the operating table, he was the one shaking with pain. Chapter 3. When I woke up, Daniel still hadn't returned. The abdominal pain from my dream hadn't faded. I got up to drink a glass of warm water, but the pain only grew more intense. My palms started sweating as I searched for my phone to call Daniel. It took a long time for him to answer. Daniel's voice was hushed in the quiet night. "What's wrong?" My voice trembled. "My stomach suddenly hurts so bad. Daniel, where are you? Can you take me to the hospital?" Daniel fell silent for a moment. "I'm entertaining clients." "Can I have my secretary go with you?" The company was in an expansion phase recently, so Daniel did indeed have to entertain clients often. "Julian Thorne happens to be near our place. I'll ask him to pick you up." When I went downstairs, a black Maybach was already parked by the curb. Julian, dressed in a suit, was just stepping out of the car. "Why did you come down by yourself? Are you okay?" I nodded weakly and got into the car. We sped to the hospital, and the pain in my stomach eased a little. After the blood test, I sat alone in the hallway waiting for the results. The hospital lights were stark white. On the cold metal chairs, there was only me and a simply dressed young couple eating sandwiches. The man picked the meat out and gave it to the woman. "You're pregnant. You need to eat more meat." The woman pursed her lips in a smile and picked it back. "I just ate a piece. You have the night shift later, you eat it." They finished their meal affectionately, and the man put his arm around the woman. "Lie on my lap and sleep for a bit. I'll wake you when the results are out." The woman curled up on the cold hospital chair, resting her head on the man's lap, and fell asleep quickly. The man moved gently, took off his jacket, and draped it over her. I looked away and unlocked my phone. My finger paused when I scrolled past Lily's Instagram feed. She had posted a photo of hands clasped together on a hospital bed, with the caption, "Baby, Mommy, and Daddy are both here with you. You have to grow up strong." I stared at the photo, an unaccountable sense of familiarity washing over me as I looked at those hands. Before I could look closely, a gust of wind blew in from the hallway window, and I realized belatedly that I was cold. A jacket carrying the faint scent of Tom Ford oud wood settled over my shoulders. Julian, who had returned at some point, handed me a warm glass of milk. His black shirt accentuated his already impressive stature, and his handsome, sharply defined features stood out clearly under the lights. I was stunned for a moment. "Thank you." Julian remained noncommittal. "Where's Daniel?" "Why didn't he come with you?" "He's in a business meeting." "Is that so?" The corner of Julian's mouth curled slightly, but he didn't say anything else. Draped in his jacket, I felt a rare sense of awkwardness. Julian was one of the few people in the company who knew about my relationship with Daniel. Their relationship was also complicated. Years ago, after Daniel and I paid off the gambling debts, he used what little money was left to go to university. Julian was his classmate, a few years younger, yet far more mature. Upon graduation, sharing the same vision, they decided to start a company together. In the early days of the grind, they were like brothers. But Daniel came from a rough background. He had great ambition but lack of security, driving him to constantly expand the business without restraint. The Thorne family had been in business for 3 generations. Julian was a young master born with a silver spoon, calm and steady. He had warned Daniel multiple times that such unchecked expansion would eventually destroy the company. With their philosophies clashing, their relationship cooled. Over the years, the company had subtly split into 2 factions led by Daniel and Julian respectively, engaging in a silent rivalry. Daniel held off the shares, while Julian held they were practically neck and neck. However, because I held off the shares, I had rallied a few founding members to vote for Daniel during the election for chairman and CEO. Julian lost by a single vote and was relegated to vice president. Given that history, sitting here with him now, I couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. "Why are you dressed so formally this late?" "Do you have a date?" I asked, just to break the silence. Julian replied indifferently, "Business meeting, it just happened to be near your place." "Oh, thank you for today. It's nothing." The atmosphere fell silent again. Fortunately, the results came out quickly. I let out a sigh of relief, assuming it was just food poisoning or some minor ailment. However, the doctor merely glanced at the report before speaking. "You're pregnant. It's been a month." Chapter 4. Daniel returned the following evening. He looked a bit exhausted, yet the corners of his mouth remained lifted. He seemed to be in a good mood. I stopped him and handed him the medical report. "Daniel, I'm pregnant." After saying those words, I carefully observed his expression. To be honest, I didn't know how Daniel would react. In his early 20s, Daniel used to say that once he had money, he would give me a grand wedding. He said he wanted to marry me. But as we got older, he gradually stopped bringing up the subject of marriage. Sometimes when I dropped hints, he would only say he was busy with work and ask me wait a little longer. Didn't know when it started, but I was no longer certain of his love for me. Sure enough, Daniel's brows furrowed slightly for a split second before instantly transforming into a smile. He hugged me and said, "Really? Babe, that's wonderful." The transition in his expression was so rapid that I almost thought I had imagined it, yet I saw it clearly. His first reaction wasn't joy. "Do you want this baby?" I asked tentatively. "Of course," he smiled, casually patting my stomach. "If the baby takes after you, it'll be adorable." But my heart slowly sank. There was none of the thrill or delight of a first-time father in his tone. It was as if we were merely discussing another routine business deal. He quickly loosened his tie and walked toward the bedroom. "I'm tired. I'm going to get some rest. By the way, since you're pregnant, don't go into the office for a while. Just stay home and rest." Since I still had an unfinished project on hand, I went into the office the next day anyway. As soon as I walked in, everyone was beaming. My assistant excitedly told me, "Mr. Hayes issued double bonuses this month. He said there's good news in his family and wanted everyone to share in the joy." I froze for a moment, a warmth spreading through my chest. So Daniel didn't lack care, he just didn't know how to express it. My steps lightened as I carried my bag into my office. However, I had barely sat down when there was a knock at the door. "Come in." I kept my head down, reviewing documents, but looked up in surprise when I heard the visitor's voice. Lily, wearing a white duffel coat, slowly closed the door and stood by the entrance. Her hands were clenched tight, clearly struggling to maintain her composure. "Elena, I need to talk to you." "My baby. It belongs to Mr. Hayes." Chapter 5. A buzzing sound exploded in my head. After fighting alongside Daniel for so many years, I prided myself on having seen it all. I had never been rendered speechless before. But in that instant, my mind went completely blank, and I even forgot how to open my mouth. Lily looked up at me. "Elena, I know about your relationship with Mr. Hayes. I know it's not my place to say this, and he asked me to give him time to handle things between you two. But now I'm pregnant, and Mr. Hayes said he would marry me. Elena, I know this isn't fair to you, but for the sake of the baby, I have no choice. Please just step aside." The young girl stood there, her face filled with an innocent sense of entitlement. In a flash, All those past doubts found their answers. I realized with hindsight just how stupid I had been. Those late nights when Daniel claimed he was out with clients and didn't come home. The unfamiliar scent of perfume on him. The way he rushed to the hospital so anxiously. The way he happily issued bonuses to the entire company. It turned out it was always for another woman. But we had been together for over a decade. For a moment, I could barely believe it. I looked down blankly at my hands, suspecting I was trapped in a nightmare. When? When did you two get together? As soon as the words left my mouth, I felt ridiculous. With Lily Community College degree, logically speaking, it should have been impossible for her to enter the company as an intern. Yet she came anyway and was placed directly in the CEO's assistant office the moment she arrived. Whose idea could that have been but his? They must have started much earlier than I imagined. It was at school. We met when Mr. Hayes came to attend a donation event. Lily pursed her lips. Elena, I really didn't know you two were together at the beginning. And later, I let out a cold laugh. But after you found out, didn't you continue being the mistress anyway? It was a classic case of the hunter becoming the prey. To think I saw this girl as innocent, even a bit stupid. How she must have been laughing at me inside while I was driving her to the hospital to save the baby she made with my lover. Lily panicked, her face flushing red. But he told me he doesn't love you anymore. He said he's only staying with you out of obligation for all the years you've shared. He loves me and I love him. And now I'm carrying his child. Elena, you've lost a baby before. How could you bear to see our child born without a father? Besides, I didn't want to bring this up, but you used to work as an escort. Who knows how you really lost that baby? Maybe it wasn't even Daniel's. Mr. Hayes would never marry someone like you. If she hadn't mentioned the baby, I might have held it together. But the moment she did, I snapped. I shot up and grabbed her by the collar. Me. Working as an escort. Go ask your good man where his first investment capital came from. Ask him who paid off his gambling debts. What right do you have to judge me? When I was by his side, you were still in diapers. I've been with him every step of the way. Who are you to tell me to bow out? What are you doing? Lily shrieked, shoving me away violently. Her hands landed square on my lower belly. A familiar needle-like pain pierced through me instantly. My knees buckled, and I stumbled backward, my lower back slamming hard against the corner of the desk. The agonizing jolt made my vision go black. The office door burst open. Daniel rushed in. His first instinct to support the teary-eyed Lily. Are you okay? Daniel frowned, turning his gaze to me. Elena, what the hell are you doing? Lily let the tears fall, looking even more victimized than I felt, and cried out. You were working as an escort. Did I say anything wrong? In the next second, a deathly silence fell over the room. I stared at the open office door, then at the shocked faces of my colleagues and subordinates peering in from outside. I suddenly lost my voice. A dull, throbbing pain began to pulse, and the pain intensified rapidly. Daniel's eyes went wide. My stomach. Following his gaze, I finally felt the warm flow beneath me, accompanied by the heavy, metallic scent of blood. Before my consciousness faded, I saw Daniel shove Lily aside and lunge toward me, his eyes wild with terror. Elena! The world plunged into darkness. Chapter 6. For a moment, or perhaps an eternity, my mind was a chaotic mess. I seemed to be back in that hospital where I had my first miscarriage. Daniel was there, holding $2,000 borrowed dollars, grasping my hand and weeping, promising he would love me forever. But in the next second, he suddenly looked up, transforming into the 29-year-old Daniel, his eyes cold and impatient. She's carrying my child. I don't love you anymore. Throbbing pain and freezing cold tortured me in turns. Covered in a cold sweat, I snapped my eyes open. Daniel was standing by the bedside, looking at me with a complicated expression. Seeing me look up, he turned his face slightly, avoiding my gaze. That single glance told me everything. I rasped out, "The baby! It's gone, isn't it?" Daniel lowered his voice. "The doctor said you were already showing signs of a threatened miscarriage. You can't blame it all on that push from Lily." As soon as the words left his mouth, he seemed to realize he'd gone too far and tried to backpedal. "Elena, you're still young. You'll have other children." I closed my eyes and whispered, "Get out." Daniel stayed by my side, refusing to leave, but I didn't say a word to him. That night when I went out to use the restroom, I heard Julian's voice through the crack in the door. "What do you plan to do about Lily? Leaving aside your personal relationship, this counts as intentional injury. The company can't keep someone like that." Daniel immediately retorted. Lily didn't mean to. She's timid. Elena was speaking too aggressively and she got scared. It was rare to hear a man like Julian sneer, his tone laced with mockery. She's 20. She's an adult, not a 12-year-old. Daniel, don't you think you sound ridiculous? Daniel sat in the hallway, pulled out a cigarette, then clicked his tongue in frustration and threw it away. Julian stood before him, arms crossed. Daniel, what exactly is going through your head? Elena has been with you for so many years and utterly devoted to you. Is Lily this good? She's just a student who knows nothing girls like her are a dime a dozen on campus. What do you see in her? Perhaps unable to hold it in any longer, Daniel rested his elbows on his knees and sighed. What choice do I have? She was only 19 when she got with me. She even tattooed my name on her body. She's pure like a blank sheet of paper. I can't let her get hurt. Julian said coldly. Elena wasn't even 19 when she got with you. Daniel remained silent for a long time. In the dead silence of the hallway, his voice was deafening when he finally spoke again. But I can't marry her. If I marry a woman who used to work as an escort, I'll be looked down upon by everyone. He looked up, a rare look of confusion on his face. Lily is a lot like Elena was when she was young. Back then, I was useless, but now I want to protect Lily, keep her pure and happy. I want to make it up to her. Anger and disbelief surfaced on Julian's face. You owe Elena, yet you want to make it up to another woman. Daniel, have you lost your mind? What about Elena? Daniel lowered his eyes. I've already failed Elena. I can't fail Lily too. I will make it up to Elena. I'll support her for the rest of her life so she never has to worry about money. I can give her anything except marriage. Julian, likely furious at Daniel's shameless logic, turned and stormed off. Chapter 7. I leaned against the wall. Strangely enough, I didn't feel rage or heartbreak in that moment. It felt like I was watching someone else's story, completely detached from any real emotion. I knew this was probably what they called dissociation. The body forcibly detaching consciousness to save itself from immense, unbearable grief. I slowly shuffled back to the hospital bed. The narrow bed was only about 4 feet wide. It was hard to even turn over. Back when Daniel and I lived in a cheap basement apartment, the two of us used to sleep in a small bed just like this. I hadn't thought about our younger days for a long time, but now those memories came rushing back with the howling night wind. Back then, my parents had just divorced. My mom took my brother, my dad started a new family, and nobody wanted me. I had nowhere to go, no degree, and no skills. Even restaurants wouldn't hire me to bus tables. Finally, I had no choice but to work as a waitress in a nightclub, serving fruit platters and drinks. I still remember that bar with its harsh, cheap lighting and tacky decor that couldn't decide if it was local or Western. The owner, Madame Rouge, squinted at me, a cigarette between her bright red fingernails. Why don't you work as a hostess? Someone like you could get 200 a pop and at least 800 if you sleep with customers. Why suffer like this? I lowered my head, twisting my skirt. I don't want to do that stuff. Madame didn't get angry. She just chuckled and scolded me in her dialect for being too naive and schoolgirl-like. Everyone who comes here ends up working as an escort. Later on, I won't have to force you. You'll be begging me to let you do it. I've lived a long time, and I've never met anyone who hates money. So I stayed at that nightclub. Life was hard but manageable, though occasionally there were difficult customers who wouldn't take no for an answer. That time, a customer cornered me again. A middle-aged man got drunk and wanted me to sleep with him. When I refused, he felt humiliated and tried to slap me right there. His hand came down and I curled up, but I didn't feel any pain. I slowly looked up and realized someone had stopped him. A boy of 18 or 19 stood there in a black leather jacket, holding a steel pipe. He raised an eyebrow with a roguish air. "Boss, I think you've had too much to drink." The man cursed and tried to fight back, but the boy grabbed him by the scruff of his neck like a chick and dragged him out. He glanced at me, then turned and hauled the man outside. The girls working as hostesses nearby excitedly pinched my arm. "Isn't he hot? That's the guy Madam just hired to run security." I heard he's a really good fighter. If I could get a boyfriend like that, I'd sleep with customers just to support him. Someone on the side laughed and scolded. "You think you'd get a chance like that? I tried when he first got here. I offered to buy him a drink and he just rolled his eyes and told me to get lost. Maybe he doesn't even like women." After that, Daniel and I didn't interact much. He would only step in to help occasionally when customers harassed me. Once I saw him after a fight. Remembering how he'd helped me out, I grabbed the first aid kit to treat his wounds. He lowered his eyes, looking impatient. It's just a scratch. No need to make a big deal out of it. I gently dabbed iodine onto the cut on his forehead. Even small cuts hurt. He froze and looked at me, then suddenly jerked his head away. Under the street lamp, I saw his ears turning slightly red. After that, I would run into Daniel at the alley entrance every day when I went home. He wouldn't say anything, just quietly followed me until I reached my door, then he'd leave. I went out of my way to thank him for walking me home, but he just said indifferently, "You're overthinking it. It's just on my way." Later, I found out his rental was way up north, and I lived way down south. Forget about being on the way. It was the complete opposite direction. He was walking me home every day, then walking all the way back to his place. Young love is fierce and unreasonable. I can't remember exactly which time it was, but as I looked at Daniel with his hands in his pockets, I suddenly asked him, "Hey, do you like me?" Chapter 8. He froze, then his face turned bright red and he snapped fiercely. "What did you say?" Just when I thought I was flattering myself, he grabbed my wrist. His expression was so fierce it didn't look like a confession. It looked like he was looking for a fight. "Yeah, I damn well like you, so what?" I pursed my lips. "Nothing. I like you too." Daniel froze. I still remember that kiss to this day. Under the moonlight, the boys' kiss tasted like Marlboro menthol. And together with Daniel, we had some good times. Though neither of us had much money, he would save up to buy me gifts I liked. Because I glanced at a dress in a shop window for a second too long, it appeared in front of me the next month. I still remember the price of that dress, $3,000. That was $200 more than Daniel's monthly salary. He even had to borrow that extra $200 from someone. Eyes red, I told him to return it, but he just grinned, snipped the tag off, and tossed it onto me. "Return my butt." "It's just a dress. Put it on, let me see." Life was simple but happy. Just as I was dreaming of saving enough money to leave this place with him, the debt collectors showed up. Our front door was covered in threatening graffiti, and the landlord screamed at us to get the hell out. That was when I found out Daniel was over $100,000 in gambling debt, which had snowballed to $300,000 with interest. He was never content with a stable life like I thought he was. He always wanted to make it big. That night, holding our tossed-out luggage with nowhere to go, we could only sit on a park bench. Daniel let me lay my head on his lap. He held a cigarette between his lips, silent for a long time before suddenly speaking in a hoarse voice. "I just can't accept it. Why are there so many rich people in the world while I have to borrow money just to buy you a dress? Elena, I'm really done with being poor. I want to turn my life around so bad." He took a hard drag on his cigarette, his voice trembling. "Elena, let's break up. I won't drag you down with me." I stood up silently, leaned against him, took the cigarette from his mouth, and took a drag. It wasn't as good as I imagined. The smoke felt like a knife slicing through my throat, stinging and painful. Coughing through it, I finished the cigarette, stubbed it out, and whispered, "I'm not breaking up. It's just $300,000, isn't it? I'll pay it back with you." $300,000. For the Daniel of the future, that was merely the price of a single bottle of red wine in his cellar. But for us back then, it was nothing short of an astronomical figure. I went to Madam and told her I was willing to work as a hostess, but I wouldn't sleep with customers. Madam knew about me and Daniel. She smoked in silence for a long while before finally cursing at me. "Another fool." I started working hard at bottle service, drinking until I was clinging to the toilet, vomiting blood, time and again, just to get a little more commission. When Daniel found out, we had a huge fight. He smashed everything in the house, then collapsed amidst the mess, covering his face with his hands, not saying a word. Crying, I hugged him. "I promise I'm just doing bottle service. I won't sleep with customers." "Daniel, believe me, I just want to help you." He slowly reached out to hold me, his voice strained and choked with sobs. "Elena, I've failed you." After that, Daniel started looking for other ways. He stopped working as a thug and started doing business with some so-called big boss. All our money went to paying off the debt. We lived in a cheap basement apartment that cost $600 a month. Nameless, multi-legged bugs and rats rustled in the night. It was only a bit better in winter. Neither Daniel nor I liked winter. We couldn't afford heating, so we relied on a single electric blanket, holding each other tight for warmth, our heavy coats piled on top of the thin duvet. At night, we shared a single bowl of noodles. I was still hungry, listening to the growling of my empty stomach. Daniel held me tight. Honey, sooner or later, I'm going to give you the life you deserve. I promise we won't live like rats in the gutter forever. Chapter 9. I stood by the window, pulling my hospital gown tighter around me. The city was ablaze with lights. Even at night, the streets were bustling with endless traffic. Daniel was smart and capable. He used the money I earned from bottle service to invest, following a mentor to make his first pot of gold. We quickly paid off the gambling debts. I didn't have to kill myself working as a hostess anymore, and we moved out of that cheap basement apartment. He built more connections and started his own business. I ran the company alongside him. Despite not finishing high school, I taught myself finance and English, accompanying him to entertain clients. Later, as he became more successful, the company grew, and the zeros in our bank account multiplied. We owned luxury homes all over the world. We never had to suffer again. But the damp chill of that cheap basement apartment still clung to me. It had never really vanished. My fingers gripped the railing tightly as reality finally began to sink in. A fire surged from the depths of my heart, threatening to burn me alive. I had been with Daniel for 12 whole years. I poured all my youth into him. He promised he wouldn't let me down. How could he? How dare he? The cold wind howled, but standing at the window, I felt none of it. I looked down, coldly surveying the neon-lit, bustling city below. I was the one who lifted him up, and I could be the one to drag him back down to nothing. The first thing I did after being discharged was find Julian. Julian was dressed in a white shirt buttoned all the way to the top, covering his throat, looking severe and meticulous. Unlike Daniel, who came from the streets and hated restraint, Julian had a strict upbringing and was always impeccable. We were both smart people, so I got straight to the point. I can help you take down Daniel. Julian didn't respond immediately. Instead, he frowned. Have you recovered? A miscarriage isn't a small matter. You should rest for a few more days. I paused, stunned. He stood up, poured a glass of warm water, and placed it in front of me. It's a new cup. No one's used it. I held the cup, feeling the warmth spread through my palms. Julian didn't ask why I wanted to go after Daniel. He sat back down, clasped his hands on the table, and said seriously, How exactly do you plan to help me deal with Daniel? I lowered my eyes. I hold all of Daniel's information, including the detailed bid contents for his next 2 projects. I'll find a way to make all his projects fail. It might impact the company somewhat, but the board election is at the end of the year. With my vote and the others I can secure, I have 3 votes. When the time comes, I'll nominate you as the new chairman and CEO. Julian didn't look triumphant. He just looked at me. And what do you want in return? Chapter 10. I stared at the glass in my hand. I want you to help me find a way to get Daniel's shares. Once you become chairman, you'll nominate me as vice president and we'll kick Daniel out of the company for good. I looked up and met his gaze. I want his reputation ruined. I want him left with nothing. Julian didn't question or mock me, nor did he accuse me of being cruel. He simply reached out his hand. Deal. I looked at that long, clean hand and shook it without a shred of hesitation. I made up with Daniel. I was the one who sought him out. After coming home, I hugged him from behind. I don't care about you and her, Daniel. We've been together for over a decade. If we separate, I don't know if I'll have the courage to love anyone else. Marry her, have children with her, it doesn't matter. I'll be right here waiting for you. Just remember to come back and see me. Daniel paused, then slowly turned around. His eyes were complicated, filled with guilt, before he finally hugged me back. Elena, you're always like this. I really feel like I've wronged you. But Lily is still young. She didn't mean it. Don't hold it against her. My face remained expressionless, but my voice was soft. Okay. We've been together for so long, separating would be painful for both of us. Let's just keep it like this. I won't let her know, okay? Daniel buried his chin in the crook of my neck. Okay, Elena, since you're being so, I have a detached villa in the city center. I'll transfer the deed to you. It'll make your commute easier. I laughed. I'm not with you for the money. I gently stroked the solid muscles of his back. In the blink of an eye, over 10 years had passed, and he had grown from that scrawny boy into this mature man. He looked down on me for doing bottle service. But Daniel, if not for the money I risked my life earning through bottle service, you'd still be a thug buried in gambling debt. You probably would have been beaten to death in some nameless alleyway long ago. I ripped my heart out for you. You climbed to success, stepping on my flesh and blood, only to look back and complain that my devotion reeked too much of blood. I slowly tightened my grip. Go back, then. Back to where you belong. Everything I gave, you will pay back. Chapter 11. I returned to the company. Rumors about me started spreading through the office, the speculation turning nasty. Some said I started out as a nightclub hostess and washed my money clean. Others said I slept my way up by seducing Daniel. Daniel never clarified things for me, but I didn't care. I just kept working for him. He was long used to me pouring my heart and soul out for him. I easily obtained the reserve bid price from his office and leaked it to Julian. Julian worked efficiently. At the bidding half a month later, the rival company won the tender with a price just a fraction higher than ours. The project Daniel had planned for a year, investing massive funds, went down the drain. He threw a massive tantrum in his office, smashing everything in sight. How could they be just a fraction higher than us? There must be a mole who leaked our bid. Investigate it. Find out who it is. The secretary looked up cautiously. Mr. Hayes, only you had the detailed files for the final bid price. The other managers were only informed at the last minute. Mr. Hayes whipped his head around. Who has been in my office? The secretary whispered. Only Ms. Foster and Lily. Daniel's expression changed instantly. After a long while, he said irritably, Send Lily in. My office was right next to Daniel, and it wasn't long before I heard the argument erupting next door. Daniel's voice was laced with anger, asking. Lily sounded aggrieved. We're together now. Can't I even visit your office? This isn't how you acted when you said you liked me. Business and personal affairs are different. You're just a secretary's assistant. Who gave you the right to wander into the chairman's office whenever you please? Lily gasped in disbelief. Are you suspecting me of leaking your reserve price? Elena was here too. Why are you only suspecting me? Daniel raised his voice. I've been with Elena for over a decade. She would never betray me, no matter who else might. Lily's voice turned teary. And you think I would? Daniel, don't forget I'm carrying your child. A few minutes later, Daniel's exhausted voice drifted through, broken and weary. All right, I was wrong. I shouldn't have doubted you. I'm just too stressed. Lily was still sobbing. Stop crying. I'll buy you that white Hermes Faubourg bag you had your eye on. Consider it my apology. Only then did Lily smile through her tears. I sat in my leather chair, the corner of my mouth twitching into a sarcastic smile. Daniel always put love on his mouth. But in reality, the only person he truly loved was himself. The moment someone threatened his interests, he would turn on them instantly. It's a pity I realized it too late. I looked down at my fingers. Daniel and Lily had only known each other for 2 or 3 years. How many rounds of suspicion could such fragile trust survive? I was looking forward to that day. Elming reality. Chapter 12. I began frequently calling in sick, claiming poor health. Many of the long-term clients I managed started to complain, some even delaying their orders. Daniel had to personally visit them to smooth things over. Projects I had previously managed ground to a halt. Julian claimed he was too swamped to help, so Daniel was forced to take charge of them himself. For a while, Daniel was completely overwhelmed. He reached out to me several times, hoping I would return to work immediately, but I brushed him off, claiming I hadn't fully recovered from the progesterone shots and the miscarriage. On top of that, I kept leaking information to Julian. Many of Daniel's core projects began to fail, and his capital chain nearly snapped. He was so busy his feet barely touched the ground. His meetings with Lily went from every day to once every 3 days, then once a week, until finally, they barely saw each other once a month. Lily finally couldn't take it anymore and went to Daniel's office to find him. At first, Daniel still had the patience to coax her. I've been too busy lately. Just wait a bit and I'll make it up to you properly. Wait a bit, that's what you always say. When will you ever be done? After trying to soothe her for a while, Daniel started to lose his patience. I'm already exhausted. Can't you just let me have a moment of peace? Not everyone is like you, with nothing but romance on the brain. I have thousands of employees depending on me to make a living. Elena isn't like you. She used to his voice cut off abruptly as he realized his slip. But it was too late. Lily's voice was sharp. Elena, if you can't get over her, why are you even with me? Yeah, she started out working as an escort, so of course she has her ways. Who knows how she reeled in those clients? Maybe she slept with every single one of them enough. Daniel shouted angrily. She's not like that. I can help you too. I'm not any worse than she is. Daniel sneered. Help me with what? Do you know how to maintain client relationships? Do you know the procedures required to take a project from proposal to launch? What can you do besides partying and swiping my credit card? Lily was left speechless. After a moment, her voice turned teary. I just wanted to help you. Daniel, why are you yelling at me? The baby and I haven't seen you in ages. Daniel let out a long sigh, his voice softening. All right, I shouldn't have yelled at you. If you're bored, go buy yourself something nice. Once I'm done with this busy stretch, I'll make it up to you. Didn't you want to go to Hawaii? I'll take some time off and take you there. Daniel and Lily never made it to Hawaii. Due to issues with the company's cash flow, Daniel had to start seeking new investment. The manager of this investment firm was an old acquaintance of ours who had invested in our projects before. After several rounds of negotiations, he showed interest. It just so happened that his firm was hosting a business gala, and Daniel asked me to accompany him. But we had just arrived at the banquet hall, and I was only halfway through discussing the project's prospects with William Henderson when I was interrupted. Wearing a form-fitting, backless deep V evening gown and exquisite makeup, Lily walked over with her cascading wavy hair and took Daniel's arm. Lips at me. Elena, no need for you to trouble yourself with Daniel anymore. William knew about the history between Daniel and me, so he was taken aback by the scene. And this is... Before Daniel could speak, Lily couldn't wait to introduce herself. Hello, sir. I am Mr. Hayes' fiancée, Lily. This inappropriate introduction made Daniel frown slightly. William's gaze swept back and forth between Daniel and me. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, my smile slightly forlorn. I apologize for the scene. Daniel and I have already separated. But please rest assured, Mr. Henderson, our personal history will not affect the professionalism of our cooperation. The smile on William's face faded slightly. Yes, I still acknowledge Ms. Foster's professional capabilities. After saying that, without even glancing at Lily, he said indifferently to Daniel, I have some acquaintances over there I need to greet. Please excuse me, Mr. Hayes. With that, he turned and walked away, no longer interested in hearing about the project's prospects. I couldn't help but sneer. Everyone knew that William was a self-made man. His wife came from a wealthy background but never looked down on him, supporting his career every step of the way. William was a devoted husband, too. After achieving success, he didn't abandon the wife who had shared his hardships. Instead, their bond grew even stronger. He had always taken pride in his happy family and held Daniel, who had a similar background, in high regard. Seeing Daniel parade his mistress so brazenly at such an occasion, he naturally looked down on him. With Daniel having a female companion by his side, I was left standing alone. Suddenly, a hand reached out in front of me. Dressed in a black suit with a perfectly knotted tie, Julian offered me a polite nod. Are you here alone, too? He was always immaculately dressed at the office, but perhaps it was the brilliance of the banquet hall's crystal chandeliers. He looked so stunning that I was momentarily dazed. Unlike Daniel's honey-toned complexion, Julian had pale, cool skin with only a faint flush of pink on his thin eyelids and knuckles. He was always polite and decorous, his almond-shaped eyes appearing entirely harmless. Yet that day in the hospital corridor, I had clearly seen his true nature when he dropped his guard. Those eyes had transformed into fox-like eyes, cold and mocking, with a half-smile and upturned corners. Now he had reverted to his courteous self. I smiled and tactfully took his arm. Daniel's expression darkened, but the drama was far from over. Many of the business partners who came over to greet us didn't care about such things. Some had brought their mistresses, most of whom acted merely as eye candy, smiling silently. However, perhaps wanting to prove she was an asset to Daniel's career, Lily kept interrupting the conversation, yet she constantly missed the point. It was obvious she had done some homework beforehand, but likely due to nerves and haste, she made ridiculous errors with the figures. Daniel's face grew darker by the second until he finally couldn't hold back and hissed. Just shut up. Lily remained defiant. What's wrong? Are you still hung up on Elena? Making a scene at such an event was incredibly unsightly. Daniel stood there, face ashen, saying nothing. The CEO opposite them looked Lily up and down, suddenly noticing the tattoo of Daniel's name on her body. Well, look at that. Mr. Hayes certainly knows how to have fun. She's even branded with your stamp. Ha ha. The others joined in the laughter. The tattoo that had once evoked tenderness in Daniel had now become a humiliating joke he couldn't escape. Daniel shook Lily off and stormed away. Lily likely realized she had messed up, trotting after him and whining coquettishly. "I'm sorry, hubby. I was wrong today. I just wanted to help you." Daniel could tolerate no more and roared in a rage. Get lost. Chapter 13. My project with Julian was also at a critical juncture. The partner's representative was difficult to deal with. Even though the deal was already settled, he kept pressuring me to drink. "I've long heard that Ms. Foster of Yeahua is a formidable woman. If you finish these glasses today, I'll inject the capital into Yeahua." In my early years, I had drunk plenty to secure investments. As the saying goes, the king of the underworld is easier to deal with than his gremlins. If I didn't show respect to someone like him, he would only cause trouble, so I instinctively reached for the glass. However, the glass was snatched away. Julian spoke calmly. "I'll drink on her behalf. I wonder if you'd do me the honor, Barnaby Walsh." The big-headed, big-eared man looked sheepish the moment he saw Julian. "Mr. Thorne, you jest. I was only joking, just joking." It wasn't Julian's position as vice president that he feared, but that he represented. With Julian by my side, I saw nothing but smiling faces throughout the rest of the banquet. My driver's car blew a tire on the way, so Julian offered to drive me home since it was on his way. I should have said something to thank him, but maybe I've just been too tired lately. I was dead on my feet and drifted off before I knew it. The music in the car had been switched to something soothing and soft without me noticing. When I woke up, the car was already parked downstairs at my place. The interior was dim, and a suit jacket with a faint, woody scent was draped over me. Julian was looking out the window, lost in thought. "Why didn't you wake me?" I felt a bit embarrassed. "Sorry, was I asleep for a long time?" "No, you were sleeping so soundly I didn't want to disturb you." Julian turned back. The warm yellow streetlights cast a faint glow on his face, softening his expression until it looked almost tender. I froze for a second, then instinctively started unbuckling my seatbelt. The atmosphere felt different, making me a little flustered. But the more I rushed, the more stuck the belt became. The buckle was jammed somewhere, and I couldn't get it to budge. I was sweating with anxiety when Julian leaned over. "Don't move." He was inches away. I could see every single one of his long eyelashes, and that faint woody scent suddenly felt overwhelming. Our breaths mingled, and I could feel the heat radiating from his body. My heart rate spiked uncontrollably. My face flushed, and I was terrified he'd hear the violent thumping in my chest. Just as my mind turned to mush, Julian's long fingers moved, and then he sat back. "There!" He had unbuckled the seatbelt. I let out a breath of relief and handed his jacket back to him. Before getting out, I turned back and said, "Today, thank you for stepping in with the drinks." Julian didn't smile. His face was completely serious. "You don't need to thank me. I want us to be partners fighting side by side. I know you're excellent and very capable. But I hope that sometimes you'll let me share the burden with you." I was stunned. I had never heard words like that from Daniel. In Daniel's eyes, everything I did for him was just expected. And no matter what I did, I never got any recognition from him. He seemed to hate it when I appeared too strong. He had always preferred someone like Lily, who could comfortably hide behind him. That was one of the reasons we had drifted apart over the years. But now, someone was telling me they wanted to fight by my side. A heavy thud echoed in my chest. I lowered my eyes to hide the emotion in them. Okay. Chapter 14. After William's investment fell through, the relationship between Daniel and Lily deteriorated rapidly. Lily was calling Daniel every day. At first, he would answer, but eventually, he stopped picking up altogether. He came home every day and hadn't gone to see Lily for a long time. However, him being home every day meant it was much harder for me to steal his files. After copying his secret files from his computer once again, I ran right into Daniel as I was leaving the study. His eyes were dark and unreadable. "What were you doing in my study?" I replied calmly. "I needed to send a file. I left my laptop at the office, so I used yours." "Is that so? What's that in your hand?" He didn't say anything else, nor did he step out of the way. I knew then Daniel was suspicious of me. It made sense. Getting her hands on the most critical files with such precision every time, that was definitely something Lily couldn't pull off. It was only natural he'd suspect me. I pulled out the USB drive casually. "The drive? Why?" "Do you want to check it?" Daniel stared at me intently for a moment, then suddenly stepped aside. "No need." My hand, hidden within the sleeve of my pajamas, clenched tight. I had emailed the files directly to Julian from Daniel's computer. There was no trace left on the drive. Even if he checked, I had nothing to fear. As we brushed past each other, Daniel suddenly called out to me. "Elena, you're the only person in this world I can trust. Would you ever betray me?" I turned slowly and wrapped my arms gently around him. How could I? You're the person I love most in this world. You know I'd rip my heart out for you. Daniel, how could I ever betray you? In this world, we're the only ones left who have each other. Daniel's hand hesitated by his side before he finally embraced me. By the way, didn't you say you were going to marry Lily? How are the wedding preparations coming along? Daniel was silent for a moment before speaking. Let's wait a bit on that. He was just stalling. He still hadn't given up on the idea of marrying Lily. A familiar surge of hatred rose within me, and I could barely stop myself from trembling. All these days, I had racked my brains and drained my soul, all just to bring Daniel down. I knew that the moment I let my guard down, I would crumble. It was only my hatred for him that kept me going. Everything I said was true. I really had been willing to give him everything once, because he was the only person in the world I could rely on. I thought I meant the same to him. Back when we lived in that cheap basement apartment, sharing a single bowl of tomato pasta, he would always give me the only egg. He claimed he was allergic to eggs, such a clumsy lie, just so I could have a little more to eat. I would remember those days forever. If anyone else had hurt me like this, perhaps I wouldn't hate them so much. But this was Daniel. This was the Daniel I had loved so deeply, who had loved me back, the man I had survived with for 12 years. How could he do this to me? My fingernails dug slightly into the muscles of his back. I felt like a ball of fire, ready to burn him to ashes, even if it meant consuming myself in the process. That night, for the first time in a long while, Daniel initiated intimacy. I had refused him many times before, but this time I couldn't. As we reached the climax, I held his sweat-drenched body with a cold detachment. It was the most intimate distance in the world, yet I felt as though we were drifting further and further apart. Afterwards, Daniel fell asleep quickly. He held me, just as he always used to. I stared at the ceiling for a while, then gently pushed him away. He didn't wake up, simply rolling over. We lay on the same bed, back to back, separated by a chasm that could never be bridged. Chapter 15. Daniel's cash flow had finally dried up completely. The investment hadn't come through, and the project was burning money every single day. Julian claimed his own projects were tight on funds, and he simply couldn't divert any capital. The board's dissatisfaction with Daniel grew by the day, leaving him battered and exhausted. Right then, I pulled Daniel aside and told him he could use his company shares as collateral to secure a loan. Daniel flatly refused at first. "No way," I urged him. "Once the funds are in and the project starts turning a profit, you can buy the shares back. It'll only take a few months. The equity structure won't officially change, so no one will find out." Daniel was truly at the end of his rope, and my words began to sway him. He asked me, "Is this source reliable?" I assured him. "No problem. The money will be there in 3 days. It's an old contact of mine." In the end, Daniel couldn't resist. He went with me to pledge his 20% stake in the company and secured the funds to pour into the project. He hugged me tightly. "Elena, thank you. Once I get through this, I'll make it up to you. Didn't you want to go to Norway? I'll take my annual leave and take you there." I had already heard him use these exact lines to brush off Lily. Hearing them now, I felt nothing but amusement. I smiled. "Okay." As soon as he left, I messaged Julian. "How are the arrangements coming along?" Julian replied instantly. "Everything is set, don't worry." I looked up, the midday sun stinging my eyes, yet I didn't close them. It would all be over soon. Julian had turned 2 of Daniel's most loyal veterans against him. The trap within the project was already set. Now, we just waited for him to lose everything. Sure enough, a few days later, Daniel's project imploded. The losses were catastrophic, and the company's stock price plummeted. Forget profit, more than half the principal was gone. Daniel's equity pledge was exposed, and the board was furious. They immediately moved to impeach Daniel, proposing to remove him and elect a new chairman. At the shareholders' meeting, I sat beside Daniel, just as I always did. In just a few days, he had become gaunt and haggard. He hadn't shaved the dark stubble on his chin, and his eyes were bloodshot. Someone shouted an accusation at him. "Daniel, do you have any idea how much the company has lost because of you? If you keep messing around like this, the company is going to collapse sooner or later. Exactly. The stock price has already dropped over 10%. Do you know how much money that is? Daniel, what the hell are you trying to do? Daniel scanned the room and suddenly let out a cold laugh. Where the hell were you all when I was out there building this empire? I've been feeding you dividends every year like I'm feeding dogs, and now, after one failed project, you want to oust me. His gaze was fierce. The company bylaws state that removing the chairman requires a 2/3 majority vote from the shareholders present. Go ahead and try to remove me, you have the guts. The shareholders began to raise their hands. 2/3. It was indeed a difficult number to reach. I counted. Even with Julian's efforts and the shareholders' dissatisfaction with Daniel, they were still one vote short. I hadn't raised my hand yet. Daniel smirked as if he had expected this all along. He raised an eyebrow at Julian. Julian, you've worked so hard to trip me up these past few days. It's a shame you're still one move behind. One vote short. What a pity. Julian replied indifferently. Is that so? The next second, I raised my hand. I agree to remove Daniel from his position. Furthermore, I nominate Julian as the new chairman. The air seemed to stagnate. Everyone's gaze landed on me, heavy with shock and confusion. Almost all the senior executives knew about my relationship with Daniel. No one expected that I would actually agree to oust him. Beside me, Daniel seemed to stiffen. After a long moment, Daniel's voice came out, filled with disbelief. Elena! I turned my head to meet his almost blank expression. Julian called out to me. Elena, come sit by my side. I stood up, walked over to Julian under everyone's gaze, and sat down, facing Daniel. Why? Daniel shot to his feet, slamming against the massive conference table hard enough to make it shake. Yet he seemed to feel no pain, his shock mingled with violent rage. Elena, you're betraying me. I smiled faintly. Mr. Hayes, I've never been on your side to begin with, so how can you call this a betrayal? Impossible. I'm still the company's largest shareholder. I cut him off. The shares you pledged as collateral have matured. I forgot to mention the funds for that came from Julian. As he stared at me, eyes practically bulging with fury, I said calmly, your 20% stake now belongs to Julian. He is the largest shareholder now. Chapter 16. Daniel was finally ousted, and Julian successfully took power. He began drastic reforms. Every project under Daniel was either halted or restaffed as the company began to consolidate. Before long, Daniel was completely kicked out of the center of power. He tried to struggle, but neither Julian nor I gave him another chance. Just as he had promised, Julian gave me the position of vice president. I no longer had to be a mere shadow behind Daniel. I had finally stepped onto the stage of power myself. No one dared to gossip about me anymore, and no one dared to bring up the fact that I had once been working as an escort. Everyone treated me with the utmost respect, addressing me as Ms. Foster. The taste of revenge wasn't as sweet as I had imagined, and severing ties with Daniel wasn't as painful as I had expected. I was too busy with work, busy with social engagements. Time truly was the best medicine. I rarely had a moment to think of Daniel. Eventually, Daniel stopped coming to the company altogether, as if he had completely admitted defeat. I moved out of our home, thinking our entanglement had finally come to an end. 3 months later, under Julian's reforms, the company began to get back on track, and the stock price climbed steadily. At the annual gala, everyone was beaming because of their bonuses, and subordinates came up one by one to offer toasts. I had drunk quite a bit and was feeling a little tipsy, so I decided to go downstairs for some fresh air. As I passed through the corridor, a hand suddenly clamped onto me, dragging me into a nearby cold storage room. My back slammed hard against the wall and a powerful hand gripped my throat. Daniel's dark eyes burned with rage. Why did you betray me? What did Julian give you? Daniel wasn't holding back at all. For a split second, I knew he really wanted to kill me. I had destroyed years of his hard work. It was only natural that he wanted me dead. Instead of fear, I laughed. Why? Do you really not know why? A trace of disdain flashed in his eyes as he growled. You hooked up with him behind my back, didn't you? Damn it, I knew you were just selling yourself. What a witch, I started coughing, then burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, that's right, I sell myself. Your debts were paid off by me selling myself. Your startup capital came from me selling myself too. If I'm a witch, what are you? A toy boy kept by a witch? I had never spoken to Daniel like this before. He looked at me like I was a stranger, gritting his teeth in fury. How did you become like this? Elena, you were the only person in this world I could trust. How could you betray me? I drove my knee into his groin, and he instinctively stumbled back. Bent over to catch my breath, then looked up at him coldly. Why did I become like this? Shouldn't you be asking yourself that? Daniel, you betrayed me first. You promised you wouldn't let me down. Now you have a woman you want to marry, you have a child. What makes you think I'd be enough of a fool to stay your secret mistress forever? How do you know I wouldn't marry you? He raised his voice. I heard everything. My voice was even louder. What you said to Julian. You said you wouldn't marry a woman who had been working as an escort, that you'd be looked down upon by everyone. Daniel was speechless. Just then, the sudden sound of a door closing came from nearby. Daniel and I exchanged a glance and rushed toward the door, but it was too late. The freezer door had shut, and the vents overhead began spewing white mist. The cooling system had started. No matter how hard we pounded on the door, there was no sound from outside. I pulled out my phone, only to find there was no signal. We were done for. The company freezer wouldn't be opened until tomorrow morning at the earliest. It would soon reach -28 degrees. I was wearing a dress, and Daniel was only in a suit. We were going to freeze to death in here, but all our efforts were in vain. Daniel kicked the solid freezer door viciously and cursed. Ugh! I hugged my arms, slowly sliding down the wall to sit on the floor. I didn't want to curse at Daniel anymore. I just found it ridiculous. Life was like one giant joke. I had just succeeded in my revenge and thought I could start a new life, only to end up freezing to death here with Daniel. Was this our twisted fate? A moment later, a suit jacket was tossed over my head. Daniel stood to the side with a dark expression, saying nothing. But his toughness didn't last long. -28 degrees could subdue any stubbornness and thaw any tension. We had to wrap ourselves in the same jacket, hugging each other for warmth. Both of us remained silent, turning our heads away. In the freezing, dim freezer, Daniel suddenly spoke. Do you remember? We used to be like this too. Since I decided to take revenge on Daniel, I hadn't cried once. I thought I had nothing left for him but hate. But the moment he said those words, my eyes stung and tears fell uncontrollably. The grievance surged like a flood breaking through a dam, and I suddenly realized why I hated Daniel so much. Because I loved him. I hated him as much as I had once loved him. Betrayal had seen to that. I lowered my head. When I spoke again, I couldn't stop my voice from trembling. Yes, back then I was working as a hostess, and you were just running security. I stayed by your side all those years, and never once did I look down on your background. When you were 300,000 in debt, I never once thought of leaving. I didn't know you'd make something of yourself. I just wanted us to be okay. I wouldn't have minded living a hard life forever. I tilted my head back and wiped the tears spilling from my eyes. I gave you everything. You were the only person I relied on. You said you wouldn't let me down. You said you'd marry me. I actually believed you, but then you fell for someone else. Falling for her wasn't the problem. If you had just told me straight, I wouldn't have clung to you. But why did you have to betray me? You claim you owe me, that she reminds you of me, so you hurt me to make it up to her. Don't you think that's pathetic? I lost 2 Bobbies for you, but when she got pregnant, you were over the moon. My child was gone, Daniel, and you didn't shed a single tear. While I was grieving, you were too busy worrying I'd go after her, making excuses for her. I hate you, Daniel. In that moment, I wanted you dead. Without Elena, there would be no Daniel today. The whole world can look down on me, but you are the one person who has no right to judge me. I wiped my face dry, my voice steadying. You asked why I betrayed you, Daniel. You taught me how. Daniel stayed silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse and dry. I didn't know, Elena. I never thought. Why didn't you tell me? I let out a cold laugh. Tell you what, Daniel. If I had told you, would it have stopped you from falling for someone else? He fell into a long silence. The frigid air seemed to freeze solid around us. Do you still love me? He suddenly asked a question I hadn't expected. I closed my eyes. I did once, but not anymore. If, he whispered, I make her leave, Elena, can we go back to how things were? What do you think? A mocking smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. Daniel nodded. We were adults. Some things didn't need to be spelled out. He wasn't a fool. He knew that a broken mirror could never be pieced back together perfectly. The cold was closing in. Daniel's embrace held no warmth anymore. I started to feel drowsy, my consciousness blurring. Beside me, Daniel suddenly spoke. His voice was raspy, as if all the strength had been drained from him. Elena, I understand now. I'm sorry, it seems I realized it too late. It was too late, but I had no strength left to speak. Just as despair took hold, a deafening crash came from the entrance. The next second, the heavy doors were blasted open from the outside, and light flooded in. Silhouetted against the light, I saw a tall figure striding toward me. In an instant, I was swept up into a bridal carry. The familiar scent of sandalwood enveloped me, bringing a wave of warmth. I only managed to hear Julian call my name. Elena! Then darkness took me. Chapter 17. Fell seriously ill. It was 3 days before I was discharged and I was still weak. Julian drove me home. This time, instead of staying in the car, he walked me all the way inside. Contrary to my expectations, Julian was surprisingly good at taking care of people. He made me some creamy seafood risotto, and it was actually delicious. Take your medicine. He poured a glass of warm water, watched me finish the risotto, and then handed me the pills. After taking the medicine, I leaned back against the headboard, and he tucked me in. The room fell into silence. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't a fool, and adults didn't need to play dumb when the truth was obvious. I could see Julian had feelings for me. He was the one who had been taking care of me throughout my hospital stay. We weren't related, and he was so busy, yet he had pushed aside all his work to be by my side every day. I couldn't lie and say I felt nothing for him. Who wouldn't fall for someone as accomplished and gentle as Julian? But I didn't dare to accept it. I was afraid he would turn out like Daniel, and I couldn't handle any more heartbreak. I was torn, a war raging inside my mind. Julian must have sensed it too. He lowered his gaze and said, "I'll get going then." His voice was flat, devoid of emotion, and the tenderness in his eyes had turned to loneliness. Watching the pouring rain outside the window, I said, almost as if possessed, "It's pouring outside." "It's fine." Julian stood up. "It's late. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to stay. I can wait in the car until the rain stops." As he turned to leave, I instinctively stood up and grabbed his wrist. He looked back, his eyes asking a silent question. I lowered my head and gritted my teeth. "Stay." Julian paused. When he turned back around, he was looming over me. "What does that mean?" In the dim room, lit only by the flashes from the storm outside, his expression was calm, but his eyes were shockingly bright, as if a fire was slowly kindling within them. I turned my head away. "When did it start?" Julian understood what I meant. He tilted his head and said, "I don't know either. At first, I always saw you following him around. I hated you back then. I thought you were just as troublesome as he was. But later, I found myself unable to stop watching you. I started to get jealous of Daniel. I was jealous of his luck, that he had someone who loved him so wholeheartedly. Then I started getting angry. Your world revolved around him. You never spared a glance for anyone else, yet he didn't even know how to cherish it. I thought, since he can't take care of you properly, why not let me do it instead?" I stared at my toes, but I started out in bottle service. Even Daniel looked down on me. How could someone like Julian, a young master born into a completely different world, possibly accept me? "That wasn't your choice. You don't look down on me." Amidst the pouring rain, Julian's voice was steady, as if nothing in the outside world could ever shake him. "I just think, if I had met you sooner, you wouldn't have had to suffer so much." I thought my heart had been tempered by fire and was unbreakable, but his words washed over me like water. My heart was slowly permeated by that warmth, and an indescribable, bitter grievance seeped out from the cracks. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. "Get some rest." He turned to leave as he spoke. I tugged at him again and whispered, "Stay." Julian turned back, fixing his gaze on me. "This is the second time you've asked me to stay, Elena. I'm not the gentleman you think I am. Don't put too much faith in me." I didn't say a word, just kept holding onto his hand. The next second, a shadow loomed over me. A split second before his kiss landed, I panicked and dodged. Julian frowned. I explained, "I still have a cold. I might pass it to you." "I don't care." He loosened his tie with one hand and tossed it aside. The black silk fluttered to the floor. His kiss was fierce, completely at odds with his usual indifferent demeanor, forcing me backward until my back hit the floor-to-ceiling window. There was nowhere left to run. Outside, the torrential rain streaked across the glass like a winding galaxy. I had always thought Julian was a calm, rational man, but his kiss was even more domineering than Daniel. I could barely breathe as I let him spin me around and press me against the window from behind. "Wait," I panicked, my fingers pressing against the glass until they turned white. He interlaced his fingers with mine from behind, swallowing the rest of my words. "Too late." I didn't wake up until nearly noon the next day. Julian's eyes were still closed, but my movement woke him. We looked at each other. His gaze was clear, while mine was evasive. It wasn't that I was being dramatic. Things had just moved way too fast between us. A few months ago, I was still his rival's girlfriend. And now, here I was, sleeping with him. I racked my brain for a topic to break the awkward silence, but Julian just looked straight at me. "What are we now?" I didn't answer. Honestly, I despised myself a little for being so difficult. We'd already slept together, yet here I was acting all coy. But I was genuinely afraid. I couldn't handle going through that again. I didn't know if I'd survive another heartbreak without falling apart. Julian watched me for a moment, said nothing, then got up and walked out of the room. He hadn't even put on any clothes. For a second, I thought he was so angry he'd lost his mind, so I scrambled up to chase after him. But then he suddenly pushed the door open and came back in. He was holding a stack of documents. "What is that?" He handed me the papers. "An equity transfer agreement. I'm voluntarily transferring 30% of my shares to you. With this, you'll hold 38% of the company's stock and become the largest shareholder. I'll be working for you now, so are you willing to trust me?" I froze. It was a long time before I heard my own voice. "Do you have any idea how much these shares are worth?" "I think I have a pretty good idea." "Are you crazy?" "No," Julian said calmly. "My mental state is perfectly fine. I just think that to me you are worth more than these shares." He took out a pen, his words concise. "Sign it." I stood there for a long time before taking the pen from his hand and signing my name stroke by stroke. Julian finally cracked a smile. "So, what are we now?" I stepped forward and hugged him, burying my face against his chest. "Hello, boyfriend." His chest vibrated with laughter, and his amused voice resonated above my head. "Hello to you too, girlfriend." Chapter 18. The next time I saw Lily, it was in a psychiatric hospital. Julian took me to see her. "I thought you might want to know how she's doing now." The first thing I did after taking charge was to fire her. Lily had come to the company to make a scene, but was stopped by security. She didn't even make it to the elevator. Bored, she went to find Daniel and used the baby to force him into marriage. Simply gave her money for an abortion and broke up with her without mercy. Used to break up. While they were arguing, perhaps emotions ran too high and started bleeding. After going to the hospital, the baby couldn't be saved after all. I heard it was a fully formed baby boy. He was breathing when he came out, but died very quickly. Lily was traumatized. She took a break from school and never finished her studies. She came to the company with a knife, wanting to fight me to the death, but security dragged her away before she even entered the building. "I sent her to a psychiatric hospital and paid for 10 years of treatment," Julian said lightly. "Don't worry, she won't be coming out to bother you anymore." Lily had disheveled hair and a twisted expression. It was obvious she was truly very, but she could still recognize me. She screamed and struggled. "Elena, you witch, this is all because of you sick. You're the one who should die. Your child should die. Give me back my baby, Elena. You'll die a horrible death. You'll rot in hell. Why do you get to win?" "You old hag, why?" She was still a student, after all. Her insults were limited to repeating those few phrases. I didn't feel any hatred toward her in my heart, just a sense of pity. A young girl who hadn't entered the real world yet, tricked by a grown man's sweet words. Even knowing she was the other woman, she tried to defend her so-called love, only to end up like this. Pitiful and detestable. I looked at her for a moment, then turned and left. A nurse quickly entered the ward. "The patient in bed 312 is having an episode again. Give her a sedative." The screaming and crying behind me soon vanished. Never to be heard again. After getting engaged to Julian, I went back to my hometown. I still had many relatives there. When my parents kicked me out that year, none of them cared about me as if I didn't exist. Now that I had money, they all popped up, trying their hardest to get close to me. I ignored them. I just wanted to take one last look at the small town where I was born. All these years, I dragged myself up step by step to where I am now. If I have anyone to thank, it's only that 17-year-old girl who had no one to rely on but still fought to survive. I walked aimlessly. When I looked up again, I had arrived at the rundown urban neighborhood where Daniel and I used to rent a place. The building we lived in had long been demolished. Even that cheap basement apartment had vanished completely, replaced by clean, brand-new buildings. It was just after school hours, and rain began to fall from the sky. Young boys and girls in school uniforms ran past me quickly, huddled under a jacket, their eyes full of smiles. I closed my eyes, and the 19-year-old Daniel appeared before me, smiling as he handed me that dress. It's $3,000. I'll work hard to make money and buy you dresses worth $30,000, even $300,000, wifey. The flash of memory vanished in an instant. When the vision reappeared, a teenage Daniel, dressed in faded denim, sat in the distance watching me. His face was clearly that of his youth, but his voice belonged to the mature Daniel. He said hoarsely, "Elena, I know what you want now." Through the curtain of rain and the crowd, I couldn't tell if the water on his face was rain or tears. As they fell, his eyes turned stark red. In that moment, the 19-year-old Daniel and the 29-year-old Daniel merged into one. He said, "I'm sorry, Elena. Don't forgive me." On the day I married Julian, I received a letter. It was a thick stack. Opening it, I saw that the bulk of it consisted of documents. It was a share transfer agreement. Daniel had signed over his remaining 13% stake to I Froze. This was the fruit of years of struggle. Although Julian and I had kicked him out of the inner circle, this was still his capital for a comeback. For a man like Daniel, climbing the ladder was his reason for living, and he would sacrifice anything to do it. Yet he had given everything to me. Now he truly had nothing left. Besides the documents, there was a single thin sheet of paper. It was a letter. "Elena, long time no see. I heard you're getting married. Happy wedding. Julian isn't the gentleman he appears to be. He's actually quite sinister. But I admire him for one thing. He can marry you. I have to admit, he's better than me. I used to think he was just smarter and more capable than I was. But now I realize he just figured it out sooner than I did. He knew what he wanted, and I realized it too late. For the first 20 years of my life, I was always poor. I was penniless and in gambling debt. The woman I loved most had to do bottle service to pay off my debts. I was in agony, but I was powerless, so I hated that time. Maybe in your eyes, that was a warm time of us relying on each other, but in mine, that period was a constant reminder of my incompetence. That used to be the time in my life I least wanted to remember. In these years of success, I never once thought about or dreamed of those days. I put money first. I climbed desperately because I wanted to shake off that shameful past. Eventually, I even started not wanting to see you. You had seen me at my lowest. You wouldn't worship me. My glamour was just a facade to you. Every time I saw you, it felt like I was back in that dark, damp, cheap basement apartment. I started coming home less and less, until I met Lily. She was so like the young you, innocent and naive. Most importantly, she had never seen me destitute. She would look at me with adoration. In her, I found the feeling I wanted to find in you. I wanted a version of you, one that had never seen me down and out. A you that hadn't suffered because of me. I started pursuing her like crazy. I spent money on her, giving her everything she needed and didn't need. I burned all my passion on her. I even wanted to marry her and build a home with her. I thought I loved her. But later I realized I never actually loved her at all. I just wanted to find something in her to make up for how powerless I used to be. I was so stupid. It took me until the very end to realize it wasn't you I wanted to get rid of. It was the useless version of myself from back then. All along, the only one I loved was you. I finally understand that now, but it's too late. I don't want you to forgive me, and I know you won't. I just want to wish you happiness. If I can't be the one to make you happy, then I hope someone else can. Be happy. Don't forgive me. Don't forget me. In a daze, I looked up and saw someone in a suit walking toward me. It was 19-year-old Daniel. We actually took wedding photos once, back then. At that time, a flyer for a photography studio had landed in front of our rental building, advertising a free shoot. I didn't know the scam where they charge you to choose the photos later, so I excitedly dragged Daniel to the studio. The studio's wedding dress was cheap, yellowed, and coming apart at the seams. The suit was baggy and ill-fitting, but on Daniel, it still looked good. Arm in arm, we grinned broadly at the camera. In the end, the owner didn't charge us for that photo. As a trade-off, he displayed it in the shop as an advertisement. 10 years roared past. That boy, blushing as he looked at me, walked through the crowd and reached out his hand. I didn't take his hand, and his expression turned sorrowful. I stood frozen in place watching him as his silhouette gradually melted into the light. In the next second, the man standing before me had become Julian. Backlit by the sun, he reached out to me, a smile playing on his lips. "Let's go. The wedding is about to start." The world snapped back into focus. and the gentle strains of the wedding march filled the air. Friends and family stood on the grass, watching us with blessing in their eyes. Sunlight fell upon me. The damp chill of that cheap basement apartment vanished completely. I slowly placed my hand in his, interlacing our fingers, and smiled. Yeah. The end. And that's a wrap on today's reading here at Booked for Drama. If you felt anything, rage, swoon, secondhand heartbreak, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow drama lovers. If you have any requests, drop them in the comments. Until next time, keep reading and keep the drama on the page.